Story 1. My 8-year-old daughter let out a loud fart in the middle of the store. A lady turned around and looked at her. Without hesitating, my daughter said, "I think someone stepped on a duck." Story 2. Once I received a call that my 15-year-old son had thrown an unopened can of beans into a bonfire at a party in the woods, causing it to eventually explode. I thought to myself, that makes sense. Story 3. My child accidentally kneed himself in the face and knocked out a tooth that was not previously loose. Yes, that's my child. Story 4. My husband is an engineer and has been fascinated with how things work for his entire life. December 2024 was my son's first Christmas at the age of 11 months. We arrived at my in-laws' house and brought him into the room slowly so he could appreciate the full majesty of the Christmas tree, adorned with lights and surrounded by presents. I gently placed him on the carpet so he could take a closer look. He crawled right over to it, then continued into the kitchen to inspect the open dishwasher. Much of the rest of Christmas was spent with him rolling the lower rack in and out and pressing the buttons. Story 5. I am a rather overdramatic individual. During virtual school in COVID, my then 13-year-old son told me that making him write an essay was akin to forcing someone to forge the blade that will be used at their execution. Yes, that drama queen is mine. Story 6. I'm a neuroscientist. When my oldest was 4, I had to attend a local conference. Since it was just sign-up day, my husband brought him over so we could spend time together. I took him inside, and he was in awe of the vendor's area. He looked through microscopes, asked me countless questions, and as an avid follower of Kurzgesagt, knew about the immune cells displayed at one of the stalls along with some basic neuroanatomy. The kid received a lot of freebies. The 2-year-old is vindictive, stubborn, and manipulative. Also, he is totally my child. Story 7. I've always known that both my children were mine, but when my son got old enough to be in charge of his own Christmas gift giving, it was reinforced when he asked me, "I just started my Christmas spreadsheet. Have you started yours yet?" Story 8. My daughter was helping me change the oil in the car for the first time when she was about 7. She was handing me tools while I showed her where the oil filter is and what other important parts of a car are. I opened the plug, and as the oil started to drain, she sniffed and said, "Mama, what's that smell?" I replied, "Oh, that's just the hot oil coming out into the drain pan." She got a big grin and said, "I like it." My husband, observing this, exclaimed, "Oh no, there's 2 of you." Story 9. Super smart, but doesn't do her schoolwork. She would rather stare at a wall than complete her assignments. I finally understand my parents' frustration with me, and I am putting all of my effort into approaching it differently. Story 10. I have been an avid reader since early childhood. One morning, I went into my daughter's room to find she had placed her stuffed animals on the floor, each with a book open in front of them, and she had a stack of books on her bed. She was propped up on a pillow, one leg dangling out of the bed while reading. She looked at me and said, "Story time. Grab a book. That is definitely my child. We have so many books now. Please send help or more bookshelves." Story 11. During dinner, I offered my toddler some cheese, and she spit out the mouthful of food she was chewing instead of continuing to chew and swallow it to get to the cheese faster. Story 12. Her fascination with snakes and other reptiles is notable. I used to work in a nature center, caring for all the display animals, including snakes and turtles, and I kept a pet lizard for about 10 years. My daughter recently got her first pet lizard at 12 years old. Story 13. My father died when I was 8. I went on vacation with my mom, and she noticed my socks didn't match. As long as they are the same style, I don't care about matching colors. She asked me if I did it on purpose, and I said yes. She shook her head and said I was just like my father. Story 14. The other day, my son asked me to make him dinner. I asked him to get something from the freezer for his meal. He looked at me and said, "It's okay, Mommy. You can do it. You're a big girl." Then he skipped away. Yup, he's mine. Story 15. Years ago, I went to the nursery for pickup, but my child was nowhere to be seen. Many kids were leaving with printouts, but I still did not see my child. Eventually, my child and the teaching assistant emerged from the teacher's cloakroom, where they had been washing their hands thoroughly, yet they still appeared quite dirty. My 3-year-old fixed the printer when no one else knew how to change the toner cartridge. However, at that age, they did not quite have the dexterity to avoid making a mess. Story 16. They are caught with chocolate smeared all over their faces, yet they still insist they did not eat the candy. Story 17. I can't come home from a hike without a pocket full of interesting rocks. My dad and I both have rock collections as well. Story 18. My 8-year-old daughter has broken her ankle 3 times. Yesterday, she fell while opening a door. Yes, that clumsy girl is very much mine. Story 19. Okay, this is a long one, but I love talking about my kids. I am a musician. I would never pressure my kids to enter the industry, but I like to play music for them when they were young just to see how they responded. When my youngest son was about 2, we were driving around in the car, and just for fun, I put on Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture to see if he liked it. The 1812 Overture is about Napoleon's invasion of Russia. It opens with some quiet, folksy, pastoral music to illustrate the peaceful Russian countryside and the peasants working in the fields. Then, after about 2 minutes, the music suddenly becomes dark and dramatic to illustrate the approach of Napoleon's army. So we were in the car listening to the peaceful, quiet part at the beginning. When the music shifted to the dark and dramatic part, I heard this tiny voice from the back seat. "What happened, Daddy?" And I thought, he gets it. Sure enough, even though I didn't push him, he became a natural musician. He plays a variety of different instruments and even received a scholarship to a music school. Story 20. A 6-year-old likes to announce his bowel movements. Mom, it's the size of a baby's arm. He is definitely his father's son. Story 21. My son has my laugh whenever we get excited. I wanted to go on a roller coaster and I was urging my husband to go with me. When he finally said yes, I made the exact same laugh as my son had just done moments earlier. It took 7 years for me to realize where he got that from. Both my children are also clumsy, and it definitely comes from me. Story 22. All your answers melt my heart. Mine is 2.5, and most things halt me and make me stare and wonder about how he's my child. The most worrying thing is how shy and introverted he is. He knows how to talk, and we spend most of our days in baby language conversation until I finally understand him and try to use adult language until he gets it. However, when we're around other people, especially his mom, you would think he doesn't know how to talk. I can actually see this happening, and it worries me. He might miss opportunities and experiences in the future. Story 23. Mine will be the one tidying up after a party. She is 3 years old, perfectly sociable and lovely. She just gets bothered by mess. She has honestly told me off for leaving a mess in the house. Story 24. Much to my spouse's dismay, all 3 of us get irritable when we're hungry. He can tell it's dinner time by the attitudes we display. If we are not fed within an hour of waking up, the rest of the day can be unpredictable. Every time one of us gets grumpy before a meal, there I am. We have humor signs and towels in our kitchen as a running joke, along with a stash of snacks. Story 25. I don't have children, but I have a niece whom her mother and I both believe should have been mine. Every now and then, something she says stops me in my tracks. I know for certain I did not donate any eggs. Story 26. Burps and farts like a trooper. I burp a lot, more than the average person, and my boyfriend farts a lot. Unfortunately, our daughter inherited both of those traits. Story 27. My daughter crashed into a trash can and knocked off her side mirror the first time she drove to school. She also totaled her father's car and had a minor accident in her own driveway when she started college. All before the age of 19. That's me. I totaled my first car on my 16th birthday. Experience the consequences, Mom. Story 28. My son is the worst when he is sick. A minor case of the sniffles and he is shivering in bed, begging for tea, and acting like he is dying. I would call him a pathetic baby if I did not also act the exact same way. Story 29. My daughter's love of sandwiches and her willingness to try almost any food that comes in the form of a sandwich. Story 30. She is supposed to be tidying up. Instead, she found a book and is reading it to avoid organizing her things. She is definitely mine. Story 31. My friend is a linguist. Whenever we are all together, she will say words in Arabic, Korean, Japanese, Urdu, and sometimes Spanish. We all tease her, saying, "Stop using made-up words that no one understands." It's all in good fun. We think it's cool that she knows so many languages. Her youngest son does the same thing at preschool. My friend has received many emails from the teachers about how her son would rather speak Japanese than English when asking for things. Story 32. My mom used to tell me that I would argue with a tree stump. Both of my children have inherited this lovely quality. Story 33. I found a notebook where my child had written video game statistics and planned their role-playing game party, similar to what I used to do as a child playing Japanese role-playing games. I still jot things down occasionally, especially for Stardew Valley. Story 34. My oldest daughter was learning to spell, but kept insisting she didn't know how to spell even the simplest words and wouldn't do it in front of anyone. When she had a good grasp on it and knew she could write out full sentences properly, then she did. Story 35. My 3-year-old is constantly singing the same part of a song. My husband does the exact same thing. My son also loves pasta as much as I do. Story 36. We don't shop there. My dad had certain local businesses that he would shop at, and my brother and I still do the same thing. A few months after my brother got married, my sister-in-law called me and asked why we didn't shop at that store. I told her, "Dad didn't like them, so we don't go there." "I know your dad didn't like them. Your brother already told me that, but he can't remember why your dad didn't like them." "Well, I don't know either, but we still don't shop there." Story 37. My mom would prefer not to eat ketchup at all, while my dad would eat it with almost anything. I am like my dad. Story 38. I am a very stubborn person, and I accept that and let people know. When I had my son, he would not move on to the next step if the previous one is not done properly in his own way. He only listens to people he thinks are leaders, and he is 3 years old. Story 39. She sticks her tongue out a little when she is concentrating on something, and I have been doing the same my whole life. Story 40. My 5-year-old nephew has my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and he always reminds me of myself as a child. He is a little crazy, bouncing off the walls. I love that kid. Story 41. Stays up all night reading and sets up her stuffed animals so they are reading books too. Then, she complains that she's tired the next day. Story 42. Kiddo engaged me in a 2-hour discussion about the lore behind a game series he enjoys yesterday. This is a common occurrence. He loves overthinking and analyzing quirky media. Yes, he's my child. Story 43. My 3.5-year-old daughter sings incessantly and creates lyrics about the people in her life to popular tunes. Some people see this as one of my best qualities, while others consider it the worst. Story 44. My 6-year-old daughter said she saw her teacher but didn't greet her because the teacher needs to be the one to greet her first. She said that's just the way she is. I completely relate to that. Story 45. She holds grudges just like me. She has a justified grudge against my mom for years. She is just lazy when it comes to schoolwork but does well enough that I can't be upset. She doesn't turn in homework on time and has to submit it late but still performs well on exams. This has been my high school experience. She is in for a rude awakening when she goes to college and encounters more complicated subjects. However, she has a solid work ethic at her job. She is cynical, not always overt, but it is present. Also, she eats raw garlic. Yes, she is like a mini version of me. It is strange having a female version of yourself walking around. Story 46. She gets very excited about a new appliance or cleaning product. She went to the store with her dad, using a bunch of coupons to get a new Swiffer mop for about $6. Then she yelled at me that I couldn't use it first. It had to be hers. She is 17. Story 47. My 3-year-old son wakes up in the morning and rips a huge fart, then laughs to himself while blaming the nearest person. He also has a lasting love for Humpty Dumpty barbecue chips. There is no need for a DNA test here. He makes mom proud. Story 48. My friend told me, I love watching you argue with yourself. After hanging out with me and my 9-year-old daughter. Story 49. My son was driving my car in the winter when he returned home to find the entire front end smashed in but still drivable. When I asked what happened, he explained that he took a corner too quickly and hit a large pile of snow. My daughter, with only her permit and me in the car, also took a corner too quickly on a country road. We ended up in an open field, but not before we took out a decaying electric pole. That section of the country road had no power for hours. It seems that we don't know how to drive in my family. My middle son refuses to get his license. Story 50. I was raised in Scotland in the 1980s, so this story may appall people today. My dad enjoyed a whiskey after dinner, and when I was about 2, I would pester him for a sip. He initially refused but eventually gave in, thinking it would put me off. However, I liked it. I would get a sip occasionally, and when I refused blended whiskey and only wanted a sip of the malt, he had that realization. Story 51. My youngest is about 2.5 years old right now, and sometimes he runs after his mother shouting, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," just like his father. Story 52. Honestly, I don't think anything has ever made me think, yup, that's one of mine. Not that I can remember, anyway. Story 53. When they fart, they quickly say they didn't do it or blame someone else. Story 54. I have a 16-month-old daughter, and when something doesn't go her way, she cries, then stops and looks at you to see if you react. If you don't react, she continues crying. That little actress. I wonder where she got that from. Story 55. One of the proudest moments was a comeback my son had when he asked my husband what was for dinner. The conversation went like this. Son, what's for dinner? My husband, steak. Son, oh, you mean mistake? My young grasshopper is learning well. Story 56. They call me out on my nonsense. Those kids are becoming independently minded, adult individuals. It's frustrating. Story 57. We had family photos that my mom organized. She was very serious about it. He was 8 years old and came home from playing with friends in the neighborhood, covered in mud, just 10 minutes before the appointment. He was being hosed down outside with a playful grin on his face. He was adopted by my parents, but yes, sorry everyone, he's definitely mine. Story 58. I was the child in this scenario. Back in 2007, I visited our country's capital city for the first time, where a cousin of mine lives, for Easter. We went to a market on Easter Day, and she bought me a straw hat with a fake stuffed chicken on it. Bright blue, my favorite color. Couldn't be packed in my luggage, so I had to carry it on the plane with me. I decided to wear it off the plane, and it was easily seen over other people. My parents were waiting for me. I was 17. Apparently, my father said, "What kind of lunatic would wear a hat like that?" Then the crowd drifted apart enough for my parents to see that I was the lunatic in question. I still collect awesome hats, but none are quite as magnificent as Francis the Chook hat. Story 59. I don't have children, but here's one of those things I did as a small child. I grew up in an open and accepting household, and I was always given honest answers to any questions I had about the world. When I was in preschool, one of my friends was confused about her private area. Happy to help, I, a 4-year-old, continued to teach her the names and functions of every part. I used anatomically correct terms as well. I don't remember this, but my mom always likes to bring it up. Story 60. My little sister acts like I did when I was younger. For example, she throws her toys across the room when she gets angry, which makes people think she is me. My mom often calls my name when she is trying to get my little sister's attention. Story 61. Today I went out for dinner. My son ran into the kitchen and kept throwing toys. Eventually, he threw his sister's glasses into the hot pot. I had to leave early to take him home. Am I surprised? Only in myself for thinking it was even worth going. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.